Every family has them. You know, the legends. The stories you tell around the dinner table that get passed down from one generation to the next. Stories about a famous ancestor, a dramatic escape, or a connection to a past that just feels a little grander than your own. But what if I told you that some of the most cherished stories in your family tree are probably lies? Now, I'm not saying your grandma was a world-class fibber. It's way more complicated than that. These legends are the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of who we are. They become part of our identity. But over the years, facts get fuzzy, details get exaggerated, and myths start to take root. As a professional genealogist, I have guided my clients on a search for the truth in their family history. And what we find often changes absolutely everything they thought they knew. It takes them down a rabbit hole of historical records, DNA tests, and some of the most common myths out there. And today, I'm taking you on that same journey to bust the biggest lies hiding in your own family tree. One of the most common stories I hear from clients, it's a classic. They are supposedly descended from a noble Scottish laird, a landowner with a castle, the whole 9 yards. The story goes that he lost his lands during the brutal Highland clearances and had to flee to America with nothing but the shirt on his back. It's a story of tragic romance, or a fall from grace that conveniently explains why the family are ordinary people in the Midwest and not, ruling Scottish gentry. It's a fantastic story. It gives them a sense of pride, a link to a dramatic past. For years, they never questioned it. It was just a fact of life. But then when they come to me, they have a little question burning them. If this was true, where's the proof? Where's the castle? What was the ancestor's name? Nobody has any answers. So we decide to find them. And the first thing we often hit isn't a clue about a Scottish laird, but one of the most stubborn myths in all of American genealogy. Number 1, your surname was changed at Ellis Island. If you have immigrant ancestors from the last century and a half, you've probably heard this one. The scene is iconic. It's even in The Godfather Part 2. A nervous ancestor, barely speaking English, stands before a grumpy immigration officer. The officer can't understand this person's foreign name, so he just scribbles down something that sounds more American, and poof, a centuries-old family name vanishes. It's a powerful story of cultural loss, and most of the time, it's completely false. So here's the deal. The officials at Ellis Island didn't write down the names. Their job was to check them. The names of the passengers were recorded on ship manifests created at the port of departure, long before the boat ever saw the Statue of Liberty. The inspector held this list and they just checked off the person standing in front of them. In fact, these inspectors were often multilingual, and they had translators on hand from aid societies. If anything, they were more likely to correct a misspelled name on the list than to create a new one. So why is this a myth? Everywhere. Because names did change, not just at Ellis Island. The change usually happened months or years later, and it was the immigrants themselves who made that call. They did it to fit in, to sound more American, to make it easier for their bosses and neighbors, or even to escape ethnic prejudice. A German named Schwartz became Black. An Italian Giuseppe became Joseph. It was an unconscious choice, an act of adapting to a new world. When we start the research for a client with a story like this, we often pull up the ship manifests for their ancestor's arrival. In one case, a client with this one client with a Scottish laird story was certain their name had been changed. But when we found the record from the 1880s, we saw it clear as day in the clerk's handwriting. MacLeod, spelled exactly as they spelled it today. The Ellis Island myth was a dead end. That family's lie was buried somewhere deeper. This forces us to confront the second major myth, one that comes from our own deep desire to feel special. Myth number 2, you descend from a Cherokee princess. Now, this might be the single most common family legend in America. The story that a great-great-grandma was a Cherokee princess is told in millions of families, often used to explain high cheekbones or dark hair. But just like the Ellis Island myth, this one falls apart as soon as you look at history. First off, and this is the big one, the Cherokee Nation, like pretty much all Native American tribes, didn't have European-style royalty. There were no kings, queens, or princesses. Tribes were led by chiefs or sachems, who were respected leaders, not hereditary monarchs. A chief's daughter might have been seen as an important member of the community, but she wasn't a princess waiting for a throne. So where did the princess idea even come from? Well, a few theories. It might have been a romantic misunderstanding by white settlers who just didn't get Native American society. Or in some cases, a white man marrying a Native American woman may have called her a princess to make the marriage sound more prestigious or acceptable back home. The story could also have been just been a way to create a more exotic origin story, or even to explain a non-white appearance in the family during times of intense racial stigma. The problem with this myth is that it flattens and trivializes real Native American history. It turns a rich, complex culture into a simple fairy tale trope. Proving Native American ancestry is serious work, requiring genealogists to trace their family to specific tribal records, like the Dawes rules. It's a journey of fact, not fantasy. The client's legend was Scottish, not Cherokee. But the impulse behind it was identical. The Scottish laird, like the Cherokee princess, was all about claiming a connection to nobility and making their very ordinary ancestors feel extraordinary. And in our modern world, that desire has created a brand new kind of trap. Myth number 3, that online family tree is gospel. The internet has totally changed the game for genealogy. Sites like Ancestry and FamilySearch have put billions of records at our fingertips, but they've also created an environment where mistakes can spread like wildfire. One of the biggest blunders you can make is finding an online family tree that looks like yours, and you just copy it, assuming that all the work has been done for you. Think of it like a global game of telephone. Someone in 2005 makes a guess, linking their ancestor to a similarly named person with no real proof. Someone else finds that tree, copies it, and adds it to their own. A year later, 10 more people have copied the tree. And soon enough, hundreds of family trees all show the same wrong connection. And they all cite each other as the source. It creates a digital echo chamber that looks like overwhelming proof to a newcomer. This is all about primary versus secondary sources. A primary source is an original record, a birth certificate, a census record, a will. A secondary source is something created later that talks about the primary sources. An online family tree is a secondary source, and it's only as good as the research behind it. This is exactly the trap that so many people fall into. A quick search for their ancestor leads them to dozens of online trees. They all tell the same story, linking them back to a famous Scottish lord and their family. They come to be thrilled. The family legend was true, but when we start looking for the sources, the actual proof, we find nothing. No birth certificates, no land records, nothing. The trees just all link to each other. It's a castle in the air, and we realize that what we want, the truth, we have to ignore all of it. We have to start from scratch and build the tree one document at a time. We have to become real detectives. That's the whole process of discovery. It's to be personal. It really makes me wonder, what's the biggest legend in your family? What's the most outlandish story that's been passed down? I would honestly love to read them in the comments below. We all have them, and sharing them is half the fun. Myth number 4. A DNA test will give you all the answers. This is where the search often takes its biggest turn, and it involves the most modern and the most understood tool that we have, the DNA test. For a lot of people, a DNA test is the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth teller, a magic wand that will reveal their entire family history in one go. The marketing definitely plays into this, promising to unlock your past with a simple tube of spit. And while DNA testing is truly revolutionary, the results are way more complicated than people think. First, your ethnicity estimate is exactly that, an estimate. When a company says you're 35% Scottish, it really means your DNA looks a lot like the DNA of people in their Scottish reference group. These results aren't set in stone. They can, and they do change as companies update their science. Your results might even look a little different from one company to another because they use different data and different algorithms. And these databases have historical blind spots. They're often heavily weighted towards European ancestry, meaning people from underrepresented populations in Africa, Asia, and the Americas might get results that are much more vague. But most importantly, a DNA test tells you what you are not who you are. It can tell you there's ancestry from a certain region, but it can't tell you which one of your 16 great-great-grandparents it came from. The percentages are clues, but not the final answer. To make any sense of them, you have to combine them with good old-fashioned paper trail research. This is where the Scottish laird legend completely blew up. Confident that they were about to prove their noble Scottish roots, the client spit in the tube and sent it off. They waited weeks, picturing the moment the results would finally prove their family story was right. The email came, and the client opened it, and their jaw hit the floor. There was almost no Scottish DNA, a tiny, insignificant trace. Instead, the largest single chunk of their ethnicity estimate, by a mile, was Irish. They were stunned. Ireland, they said? They had zero family stories about Ireland, no Irish recipes, no Irish heirlooms, not a single mention of an ancestor from the Emerald Isle. The DNA was directly contradicting the story that their family had built its identity on. The test wasn't the final answer, but it was a giant blinking neon sign telling us we had been digging in the wrong country entirely. So, armed with this shocking new clue, we went back to the records. But this time, we weren't looking for Scottish lords. We were looking for Irish farmers. We broadened the search for their great-great-grandfather MacLeod, looking in Irish heavy communities in the U.S. and in passenger lists coming from Cork and Dublin, not just from Glasgow. And then we found it, a census record from a small town in Pennsylvania. It listed him, his wife, and their kids. And right there in the column for father's place of birth, the census taker had written one word, Ireland. In another document, a naturalization paper, we found his port of departure, Queenstown, now Cork County, Ireland. The main port for millions of Irish fleeing the Great Famine. Everything just clicked. This Scottish lord story was a complete fiction. The truth was both more humble and way more powerful than the client's ancestors were from Irish famine immigrants. They had come to America with nothing apart from a massive, desperate need to be away from that horrible environment. And somewhere over the next generation or two, as they tried to fit in, their own painful history was forgotten. It was replaced by the more romantic, less traumatic story of their new neighbors. The lie wasn't malicious. It was just a coping mechanism. It was a story that helped them belong and leave the trauma of the famine behind. Finding this out wasn't a disappointment for the client. It was a revelation. The cheap glamour of the lie was replaced by the raw, heroic truth of who their ancestors really were. They weren't aristocrats. They were survivors. And that felt infinitely more real. Your family tree isn't some perfect finished document. It's a living puzzle full of human error, wishful thinking, and long-kept secrets. We've seen how easily myths can grab hold. The name change at Ellis Island, the Cherokee princess, the danger of online trees, and the misunderstanding of DNA. These legends stick around because they tell us something we want to hear about ourselves. But the truth, even when it's less glamorous, is always more powerful. The real reward of genealogy isn't finding out you're related to someone famous. It's uncovering the true stories of the ordinary people whose resilience, struggles, and choices led directly to you. It's all about finding your people, whoever they turned out to be. The lies in our family trees aren't always meant to fool us. They're just stories. So the real question is, what story is waiting for you to uncover? If you've enjoyed this trip into the myths of our past, please subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss our next investigation. And if you're ready to start digging into your own family secrets and maybe bust a few myths of your own, check out the links in the description for some of the tools and resources I use. Or if you would like to reach out to ask for help with your family tree, please do. Until next time, this is Eric with Trace Your New England Roots, where history starts with your family.